Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, author Teresa Strasser talks about her new wonderful book called Making It Home.
There's no way out of this other than through this. And so I'm going to have to stand here, and sometimes it's going to really hurt. And sometimes that ball's going to hit me on the rib, and you're going to see like the stitches of the ball in my skin, and it's going to leave a mark, and then it's going to be okay, because there's no way out of this unless I stay here and feel all these things and feel them with my dad. And I think that's why baseball was a grief group, because we could have all these big feelings together about baseball, but it was really about everything. You know, we could hate losing, but it was just about baseball, but it was really about everything. And we didn't have to like losing because we hated it, and it always sucked, and we never liked it, and we never, ever accepted it. And you know, we could survive it. We learned we could tolerate it.
Today on Storyworthy, author Teresa Strasser talks about her new book, Making It Home. Stay close.
Hey, it's Teresa Strasser, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of over 13 years or a brand new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed the show last week with comedian Deborah DiGiovanni. She talks about her most troublesome apartment. Troublesome is one word. Another word is overrun with raccoons. So you could say that. So that was a difficult apartment for Deborah, but a very funny story. So go back, you guys. Listen to Deborah DiGiovanni last week, but not today. Stay with me now, because today I'm here with a person I've known for a long time, an extremely talented person. Her name is Teresa Strasser. You may know her best as Adam Carolla's sidekick for a long time, but she moved to Phoenix a while ago and was hosting a show down there, a television show called The List. Was The List like a hard copy or something? What was The List?
The List is what's known as a syndicated lifestyle show.
Okay.
Wherein we tackle some hard journalism and some difficult topics, like 3 ways to make guacamole.
I was going to say, you're so full of shit if this is going to be hard. I know it's not going to be hard.
Hey, I've had to cover how to clean out your garbage disposal. Christian Amanpour wasn't ready for that one, so they needed to bring in old Teresa Strasser.
Hey, one time I did an industrial in Las Vegas on how to save water in the state of Nevada. And I am on screen, changing the flapper in a toilet. Thank you.
You know, this is really, it's been a glamorous career. It's for the funny thing is I started out as a newspaper writer, and I was making $6 an hour writing obituaries for a small newspaper in San Francisco where I grew up. And at the time, you could not have told me that that wasn't the most glamorous thing that had ever happened to anybody. Like, that I would earn one single dollar writing was so out of the realm of possibility for me, because my dad was a mechanic, you know,
right.
I thought, like, I don't know, what jobs do people do? Everyone in my family either worked for the federal government, like as a teacher or some other kind of employee, or my dad fixed cars.
How did you get that job? Did you apply to the newspaper?
That's a great question. So I was going to school in New York, and this was part of an internship program. And I loved looking for stuff like that. I would always look for summer internship programs.
Yeah.
And this was one where you got a job in the city of San Francisco for the summer. They didn't pay you, right, for that summer. And then once a week, you would meet with the other 50 interns that were also working in San Francisco, and you talk about your experiences. So I got an internship at this newspaper, and I wasn't good at all, but I was really fast, and they only had 4 reporters. So I remember even one of the reporters coming to me and saying, low key, hey, stop writing so fast, because you're making us have to write fast. And I had no idea. I didn't have a frame of reference. So I thought, like, just write 2 stories a day. I didn't know I didn't know, like, they were writing 3 a week. So I was so fast. And then the following summer, they asked me to work there because I could turn out the copy quickly, and I was so cheap.
Wow. And so then they said, can you write obituaries?
Yeah. So at first I was on the old people beat, meaning like if someone was turning 107, 108, they'd always do a story. So they'd send me on the bus out to the old folks home.
Oh my gosh.
And then I would interview the person, the standard, like, what's your secret to long life? Oh, I drink wine. I don't put salt on my chicken. I don't gossip, so I would write those stories and I kind of had a knack for them. And then no one wanted to do the obituaries. I mean, I was a teenager. I was like 19. So I really didn't have like an intricate knowledge of grief or death or anything, but I guess it kind of bookends my career as I now have a grief book out.
That's interesting. Let me ask you something. Is there a certain way to write an obituary? Because a couple years ago, when my dad passed away, I wrote I have 5 siblings, so it's a big family. I wrote what I thought would be a great obituary for my dad because I was really close with him and I knew who he was and I knew, I know his sense of humor. My dad actually was an actor and he was in a sitcom. It was a Canadian sitcom. He lived in Pittsburgh, but he would go up to Canada and shoot this sitcom. And it was called Pastor Greg. And my dad played the mayor of the town and also the confidant to Pastor Greg. It was all very religious. Anyway, my dad, one of the things he would say is he'd say, hey, it ain't Seinfeld, but I'm having a blast. So I put that in my little obituary. I said, and my dad was most proud of Pastor Greg, which he said, hey, it ain't Seinfeld, but anyway, I wrote this obituary. I thought it was clever. I thought it was fun. And my sisters all totally shot me down. They said, that's wrong. That's not how you do it. There's a certain way. You have to mention these people. You have to have this language. Is that true?
Well, there's definitely a protocol depending on the publication. Is you see those really complicated paragraphs like survived by so-and-so, all that. That part's complicated. And I would always have the family write that. And I think depending on the editorial policy of the publication where it's running, they might need to do a lot of that. But I've seen lately tons of these viral obituaries where a relative just went off the rails and did something really creative and funny and irreverent. And those do tend to go around. And personally, I think if it reflects the tone of the person, then it's beautiful.
That's what I thought.
And by the way, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. And I'm glad you were able to write that, even if your sisters didn't appreciate your humor.
I know. And my dad, he was such a good guy. I had such a great relationship with my dad. Not as a teenager. He left when I was only 15. I didn't see him for 9 years. I got involved with a lot of horrible men, but later in life, we became really close and it was so easy.
John Mayer was right. Fathers. What's the song? Fathers, be good to your daughters.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And anyway, but later in life, we became really close. And I always know it was easy to buy my dad a gift because we liked the same things. So I could get him like a George Carlin book and he would love it. Or I could get him movie tickets and he would love it. So we had so much in common. But anyway, the whole obituary thing, I think they read terribly dry. And I know, in fact, another idea I had, I'm full of ideas. It was Obit TV. If you die and you're not on Obit, you ain't it. If you're not on Obit TV.
Wait, this is so good. You know how every year the in memoriam and the Oscars, people get in their feelings because someone's left out. It could be just basically an entire show that's just a sad montage of dead people.
And you could host it. And we could have disease of the day or disease of the week. And somebody died of the disease. And we talk about that. And then we have like the high profile deaths. And then we go just to the ticker tape.
I will dress like Elvira. And we'll do
Everything costs money. But you got to pay. You got to pay to get on.
Grief is having a moment right now. I think a lot of people are aware that we don't talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of a big thing in the culture right now. There's a lot more like funny, irreverent grief books.
It's true.
And because the pandemic and my
dad. Go ahead. My dad would show me these old pictures of him and all his friends, and he would look at the picture. He'd say, "Honey, check this out. You see this? Dead, 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 dead. I'm alive, she's alive, and he's alive. That's it." everybody, we're all going down the same path.
Well, maybe that's a segment on your show. Who's dead? Because occasionally someone dies in a celebrity, and you think to yourself, Abe Vigoda wasn't already dead?
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Often you'll think people have been dead that haven't been dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, I am so happy to talk with you today, Teresa. You've been so busy. One more question about the list. Was it a topical show? Was it like news, or was it a magazine? It could be anytime, like Evergreen.
I am so glad you asked this. First of all, it's very timely when you clean out your garbage disposal or how you make the guacamole. No, it was always tied to it's National Guacamole Day, everyone. We've sent Teresa Strasser out to Barrio's Cuisine to show you 3 unexpected ways to make a taco. Wow, a dessert taco with Nutella and banana. This is delicious. So the way we shot it. So this was, you've heard of the Spelling Bee, which is produced by the Scripps Company, and Scripps owns a whole bunch of television stations. So this show appeared on all Scripps stations. So sometimes it would be on 12 channels. Sometimes it would be on 40 channels.
I had no idea. Interesting.
Yeah. Because you need to stop the commercials from touching each other.
Yeah.
And that costs a lot more money if you're running Jeopardy or even I Love Lucy reruns. But if you can produce a show cheaply and put it wherever, whatever holes you have in your vast media empire, then that's a way to save money. But the way we did it, so that's how I ended up moving here to Phoenix, because it was cheaper. And they actually had a news station here with a bunch of room in it. So they built a set and a newsroom in there. The way they were doing it was they would shoot 2 days in advance and sort of try to make it feel live and current. So sometimes 1 day in advance, sometimes 2. So I would always say our motto, the list, yesterday's news, tomorrow. 11 years, though, 11 seasons is an eternity in television. So I don't want to I'm very grateful to have had that job, because it allowed me to drop my kids off at school, pick them up, take them to Little League practice, live my life.
It's great. And you're in front of the camera. It's exciting. Let me ask you, because I know it's changed. I know television has changed, because I know that and I've never been in television news, but I remember it used to be okay, I'm a reporter. So Teresa, go out to this taco stand, but it would be Teresa, a sound man, and a cameraman, 3 people head out. But now how many people head out?
So you're talking about the rise of the MMJ, the multimedia journalist. If you're on vacation or you live in a small town, I remember on my honeymoon, we went up the central coast of California, and I love watching news in San Luis Obispo or Santa Maria. It's so fun. So if you're in a market like that, you probably go out with your sticks, your tripod, right? And you probably film your own thing. And
by yourself.
Yeah,
by yourself. The car.
You put on your lav mic, you park your car, you put your camera on sticks. If you have if you're interviewing a guest, I don't even know how you get a 2-shot, and then you'd edit it and you'd upload it. MMJs in small markets do all of that. On this show, they would have us go out in threesome. So there would be a producer.
There would be nice.
A cameraman who would work 2 cameras and both audio for the host and the guest. And then the cameraman would edit and upload. The producer would do a paper cut. So they would watch everything and write down what should be in the story.
And then you could just be talent.
I was just talent. I never did learn how.
That's a treat.
I know, but I feel like I should have learned how to edit.
Oh, screw that, man. Hey, listen, they've got guys up there that are flying helicopters. They're talking in the news station. They're talking in the news station at the same time talking about traffic. So they're looking at traffic. They're flying a plane. They're listening to air traffic control. It's so funny. They're doing every single
job. Yeah. No, it's crazy. And there have been some accidents. So I don't know if that's the safest job in the world, but that's not why they chose to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, it's an interesting field that you've landed in, and you're so good at it. So I'm happy for you, because I have a feeling they love you in Phoenix. Do they love you in Phoenix?
Well,
yes, they do.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I sat in on a radio show here, a morning show for a few months while someone was on maternity leave called John, Jay, and Rich. And I think I got more attention from doing the radio show than 11 years on the TV show. You know, it's Marshall McLuhan's Hot Medium, a radio show. You're listening to them in your car. You can't see them. It feels like they're going right into your head and it feels like you know them. Yeah. I mean, I have like a deep relationship with Robin Quivers from the Howard Stern show, although it's unilateral and she doesn't know who I am.
That's right. I love her too. I know what you mean. Well, that's the power of podcasting as well. I mean, that's kind of the idea, is that there are it's personal and you are talking to somebody personally. And a lot of times they continue listening year after year. You become part of their routine. You know, when I teach podcasting a couple times a year and I try to explain to people, you know, you have to find a way to get into somebody's queue. You know, you have to find a way to get into, because a lot of people haven't even seen Ozark yet. You see, there's a lot to do. And there's a lot of entertainment out there. So to try to get somebody's attention, you really have to make it worth their while, I think.
That is such a great point. I used to listen to your show on the regular. It was in my routine. It was in my queue. And back then you had this great co-host.
Yeah, Hannes Finney.
Hannes.
Yeah, we were together for 6 years and now we've been apart for 7. We're divorced. No, we're not. We never married. But yeah, he's still a friend of mine. But I do the show alone instead. That's all.
Listen, sometimes Paul Simon has to leave Art Garfunkel. It happens.
That's what I'm saying. And then you've written a couple of books, Exploding My Baby, which I adored. I adored your writing in Exploding My Baby. I really did. And now it's been a bit of a gap. You know, you've been raising these kids. You moved to Phoenix. You're on a television show. You're married. You have a whole life. And now you write the book, Making It Home. And this book, Teresa, I'm telling you, it's making it home, life lessons from a season of Little League. Although it seems like more than a season. Was it more than a season, or is this essentially one season?
So I used one season as a framework to tell the story about my brother and grief and how my dad and I repaired our relationship over the course of that one season, but it bounces around in time. So a good example, just from a structural point of view, is the book Wild. Obviously, I wish it sold like that. But Cheryl Strayed uses this one hike as a framework, and she goes back and forth in time. So there's childhood flashbacks, it goes forward, it moves around, and it always comes back to that hike. This season does the same thing. So actually the first chapter is a year after the season, but it always comes back and just covers those 16 games of that one season.
Okay. You have 2 sons, Nate and Andrew. I love the way the little brother emulates the older brother. Oh, it's so sweet. Is that the word, emulates? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Your vocabulary is terrific. You have a terrific vocabulary. I've got several words written down. I was hoping you could explain for me. And of course, yes, I know I could look it up. Yeah, I know that. But I thought it'd be more fun if you just tell me what the hell some of these words mean. Like some of the words like, oh God, and by the way, this was such a moving page. The whole page. God, Teresa, I read a lot of your chapters over again because they're so worth it. It's so worth it. Now, here I am. You're in San Francisco walking through Union Square and you get the call that your mother had passed away. And, you know, wherever you are, when you find out news like that, shit's going down. Something is happening in your body. And, you know, you just broke down. You broke down and you call your husband and you are wailing and it says your body is doing something between davening and Capiro.
Capoeira.
What is that? What's davening?
Oh, okay. So davening, you're excused for not knowing because that I think is from the Yiddish. But if you've ever seen in a movie like Orthodox Jews, davening is kind of like where you rock back and forth when you're praying. So I was doing that as I was standing on the corner when I got that call on Geary Street in front of a Starbucks holding my wheelie luggage. And I was just kind of like standing, but I was rocking back and forth as I'm doing it now. So it probably affects my audio, but, you know, like mostly from the waist up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something you do when you're like in a deeply spiritual state and you're praying. And then
Sure.
capoeira, again, growing up in San Francisco, I feel like that was always like on every street corner was a telephone pole, and stapled to that telephone pole was a flyer telling you where to take capoeira lessons. I don't
What?
know exactly the origin, but it's like dance mixed with martial arts.
Wow.
And you would take classes in it, and I think you could see performances of it. So it's, yeah, I mean, there's somebody who could define it a lot better than I could, but I think it's a form of martial arts that's mixed with dance.
Okay, so those are big words. I had not heard that before, but you do talk about being hunched over at the waist.
Yeah.
And I've had that. I've had that where you are just down. I mean, you know, it's like your body hits a wall and it's like, no, I can't even stand up. You know, it's like when you hang your head in sorrow and then there's no lifting up your head. You just don't have the neck muscles. Oh my gosh. So essentially this book is about grieving your brother who passed away way too young from bizarre cancer. Like what was it in his spine or something?
Yeah, it was a very rare form of spinal cancer where
Yeah,
he
what
had a
the
tumor
fuck?
on his sacrum, and it had been there, they don't know. They think it could have been there 10, 15 years. It could have been a
Yeah,
juvenile tumor. It
yeah.
was slow growing, but by the time they found it, it was softball sized. And so they removed it, and he was able to sort of go on. And in my mind, I had decided it was not coming back, and that was it. Like he was going to have some tough side effects, but he was going to go on with his life.
But a lot of
Um,
people who have cancer, myself included, that's exactly what happens. They take it out and you are okay.
and
And in fact, you go
that's
on
it.
10 years, 20 years, 30 years, of course.
Exactly. And so our family had been in touch with some other people who had this. Here's some long words for you: a maxillopapillary ependymoma. It's
Wow.
so rare that there was like one surgeon at Johns Hopkins who would take these tumors out. They could be anywhere on your spine, they could be on your neck, your thoracic spine, your sacrum. So I think there was something like 30 cases a year internationally. So there wasn't a lot of data, however you say it. And but I had just decided that my brother, he was really hardy, he was really strong, and he was going to go on. When they first took it out, it took 17 hours. And I think there was like 12 doctors and nurses in the room, and he
Oh
got
my
through
God.
it. He was in the hospital for like a month after that. And then, 7 years later, one of the rods they put into his spine had cracked. So they went in there to fix it. And everything sort of went downhill after that. And then it started growing again, and then they couldn't keep taking it out. And yeah, it was a long process of dying, a long, awful
Was there
process.
ever an option that, like, okay, you're going to be a paraplegic, but you'll live?
You're the only person who's ever asked that question. My dad and I talk about that all the time because my dad. So by the way, I've read a bajillion grief books, and one of the great and helpful things that I read is that everybody who loses somebody, not everybody, but a lot of people who lose somebody to an illness like cancer or some other long-term illness, one thing that happens when you're grieving is that you start thinking that if only this, if only that medically, if only we'd
Sure.
gone to that doctor, if only we'd done that diet, if only we hadn't done that procedure, if only we had done that, and then the person would still be alive. So it really helped me to know that that's something that's a typical part of the grieving process, because otherwise I was perseverating. Like my dad and I were going round and round and round and round. And even now, probably within the last 3 months, my dad has said to me, why didn't they give us the choice? Why
Yeah.
didn't the neurosurgeon say, would you take this choice? We can take out this entire tumor clean, and we won't worry
Right.
about walking, using the bathroom, sexual things, moving, feeling. You will be paralyzed from the waist down, but you will live. And my
And you will have your
yeah,
children. You will be with your
yeah, because he
boys.
had two young kids when he died. I think they were 5 and 7. So
Yeah, they were little.
they were little, and he'd been like living in the basement, which they turned into a hospice room. So yeah, my dad and I talk about that all the time. It gives me some comfort to know that I don't think my brother would have taken that choice.
Oh,
I don't think
interesting.
so. I'm not 100%, but I think he would have rolled the dice on the surgery and thought like, let's try this. Now, after that, when he ran out of treatment options, they couldn't do any more radiation. And they said, you've got 6 months to live. Like by that point, I don't know. It's like you get into the weeds with this stuff. And what you have to sort of say is like, you know, you like it's what's done is done. And also the grief book that talked about this that I read said, probably no matter what you did, that person was eventually going to die. Maybe it would have been in a different way. Maybe it would have been a few months earlier, but that person was going to die. So nothing you could have done medically would probably have changed.
I know,
that.
but we're all going to die. But still, doctors do make mistakes. I'm just saying that is a fact.
True.
When I had my baby, the lady, the obstetrician made big mistakes. And my kid was born floppy, which means, you know, she had to be intubated, you know, like, so the first photos of my baby, there's like blood on her face, you know, like it's just, yeah, because you know what? She did fuck up. That obstetrician fucked up, and I'll say it forever. I don't care. She did.
Well, by the way, my dad has a grudge because even though this brain surgeon did an incredible job and was able to have my brother be able to walk and retain a lot of function and everything after the first surgery 7 years before he died, my dad thinks that guy was a genius, and, you know, he had a chair named after him at a university, and he just wanted to show off all he could do instead of saying, hey, this might come back and you might die. Let's just take the whole thing out. Like he wanted to show off his mad surgical skills. That's my dad's theory.
I don't necessarily disagree with Nelson. Let me talk about Nelson here in your book. This is a paragraph you wrote about your dad, and I met your dad. I met him at the Coffee Bean, remember? Yep. I remember because my kid was there, baby Alabama, and she wrote all over the table in a Sharpie, and we just kind of pretended we didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, you got to just look away.
All right.
Sorry, Coffee Bean, but I've bought a lot of overpriced lattes.
Here's Nelson. He's got very few teeth and gives very few fucks. His ears are hairy and his eyes are twitchy and his hat is sweaty, and he has no pension to spend on a timeshare or a speedboat, and he owns no pants. All he has is a tin can and a bicycle and a storage shed. And maybe, if you believe in all that, and he most certainly does not, he's got himself one left-handed all-star angel right out of Santa Monica who may or may not show up someday, take hold of his hand and his soul, and shepherd him somewhere nice to a wide gap way out in deep center. So you're talking about your beautiful son, that he does have himself a left-handed all-star angel. I think that's so sweet. So Nelson comes to Phoenix to live with you guys. And my brother had played baseball. My brother was a lefty. My son's a lefty. They were both born on September 24th. So that paragraph actually references my brother out there in the outfield, because when my dad and I watched Nate play, we were like, this is the second coming. Like, if you don't think baseball can resurrect the dead, it did. And that's Morgan, your brother. Oh, man.
Yeah, Morgan was my brother.
I love
and
the
Nate's
name Morgan. My sister let me name my niece and a little girl, and her name is Morgan. But it's a wonderful name. You don't hear a lot of Morgans.
I like it too. Yeah. Yeah, my parents were hippies, and they named him after a movie that no one's ever seen, where I think Morgan was a gorilla, and I'm a Jew named Teresa. So my parents just really freestyled it with the names.
And then you say when he arrived in Arizona, he didn't have much more than his thick head of hair, which he promptly shaved. Haircuts are a waste of money, he grumbled. And I knew he had shaved it to recast himself. The guy with the thick salt and pepper hair had spent a couple of years caring for a sick child, watching him die. And this bald guy was different. He'd walked through a crucible, and now there was nothing much left to singe. I love that about your dad. He really has been through all of it. And he is now in the moment, living in his trailer with his sweat stain on the couch. I saw that picture you posted, cracked me up.
He doesn't like to use his air conditioning, and it is 118.
And he says, the best thing you ever did was telling me I wasn't getting any younger and that I should be closer to family. You were right. Moving here was like a do-over, he announced the week he arrived in Arizona. Being a grandparent is a do-over. So true. So true. Right? I think it'd be a wonderful thing to be a grandparent someday.
Yeah. Same. Because you aren't faced with all the really difficult parts of parenting. and you do get another shot. And that's why I loved baseball as a framework for a story about a redemptive family relationship, because in baseball, you get 3 swings, you get 3 outs. There's the bottom of the inning and there's a top. And I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but theoretically a game of baseball could last forever. So like you're never down and out. Like in Little League, they time them out, but in the majors, yes, there's a pitch clock now, but baseball isn't about seconds. It's about outs. So that's how you track baseball. And thus a game could theoretically go on forever.
How interesting. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I live over a baseball field.
You do?
I live in an apartment over John Marshall High School, right over the baseball field. So,
oh my God.
And I've lived here for 12 years. So often we'll hear like a big, and then my kid will run out of the house and go get the baseball because it hit the side of the building.
Oh,
so I have a whole glass vase. It's about 4 feet high, full of baseballs that have hit the apartment. And I also have a big garden. I happen to have a really beautiful urban garden right below the window, and baseballs land in the garden all the time. So when my kid was little, she would say, "My mommy grows baseballs."
I had no idea.
It has become a part of my life because the kids are out there constantly. There's a baseball field. I'm right over first base. And also there's a softball field for girls on the same field. It's huge. And I have been listening now to baseball, and I also hear the bell of the school, ding, ding. I hear the bell, but it's now such a pattern of my life. When I take a nap, if I don't hear baseball, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like it's always happening.
Well, a baseball nap is a very good nap. Like if you've ever listened to a Dodger game on the radio back when Vin Scully was alive, what's better?
It is. It's a wonderful just tone to have on in the background. I kind of feel the same way with football because I grew up in Pittsburgh and it was kind of the same thing. However, I'm not a football fan anymore. Okay, so. And I know I want to get to your story because you're going to talk about the book, which I'm anxious to hear what you talk about because, oh gosh, I'm like out of breath even just because I loved it so much. And I really want to highlight a lot of the different sections. You can see all the pages that are turned down here.
It makes me so happy seeing that your book is dog-eared.
Big time,
Thank you
big
so
time.
much.
But I definitely have a lot of notes for you. Let me ask you, your mom passes away. And even though she was kind of a shitty mom, you had this absolutely shitty childhood where your parents, they just fucked up, man. They just fucked up big time. They got divorced. So they had 2 kids. They divided the kids. You get one, I get one. I mean, what the fuck is that? I mean, they weren't thinking. They were both young and immature. And who knows? Your parents were like products of the 60s, it seems. And like my parents were conservative, Pittsburgh, Catholic, like none of that would have went on. So in a way, it seems your parents were more educated, more worldly, more cultural. They knew they had options and they wanted what they wanted. The kids were definitely a second choice. It was crazy because you don't really hear often that happens or people don't talk about it anyway. So now you are cleaning out your mom's apartment or her house. And you are going through the bedroom and the boys are out in the other room and they're playing and your kids are screwing around the house, right? Because you have to go clean out this house, your mom's house. And you talk about when you were a little girl that you crafted her this little tiny like pieces of clay that you were supposed to put maybe like pencils in or something. And that you loved it so much and you were so proud of it. You worked on it. And your mother just kind of looked at it and just nothing. I mean, she didn't give it any reverence. But now you're cleaning out her place and you find it in her bedroom. And you say, now I hold that little bowl and I think about how long she kept it, how many decades, how many moves. She never displayed it before and I had no idea she kept it. I cried into that little crappy craft, more hideous than I remembered it. I felt the paint smooth and cool in my hands. I brushed my fingers across the too small lid resting at the bottom of the bowl. I showed it to my boys and then I tossed it. Wow. It's so interesting you threw that away. I guess I just feel like that would have been the one thing you kept.
I think I was really tossing that resentment. because when I'd made the craft, so, my mom worked a couple jobs. She owned a coffee shop called Sacred Grounds in San Francisco, which is still there in the Haight-Ashbury district. So, I mean, I've got my like hippie kid bona fides. So she would send me to whatever camp was free at the park and rec. And there was a park in our neighborhood in Noe Valley. And it was a craft camp. And look, I was not good at art. I was terrible. My craft was shit. Do you swear on this podcast?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It was terrible. But I had spent all day on it. And it was like, you'd roll the clay into little worms and then you wrap them around so you make the lid. And it was kind of a process. Like it seemed pretty cool because they would send it away to the kiln.
Yeah, it has to be fired or whatever.
Yes. Right. And then you'd paint it and it would be glazed. So, it was a process. And I think, created these things over the course of the week. And then mine was going to be a gift from my mom because it was just me and my mom at that time. And I was very overly close to my mom and probably still am, even though she's dead. Like there's still a part of me that just wants my mom to go, what a beautiful craft you made me.
Yeah.
So I think when I was releasing that, I was also just releasing this resentment for all the things that my mom hadn't done right, because she also did really encourage me to be a writer. She thought that I was a good writer. And anytime I wrote anything, even as an 8 or 9-year-old, she'd read it and she'd say, wow, this is better than anything I could ever write.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I mean, that was something.
Yeah. So I think in her mind, she was being a good mom because if she was brutally honest, and she would always say, if I don't tell you, who will? And if I'm honest with you when you're not good or when things aren't good, when I give you a compliment, you'll know it's for real.
I guess. I don't know. As a parent, I mean, is that how you would be with your children?
I'll tell you how I've improved on this because my kids have followed in the tradition of being very sucky at crafts. And like, what am I going to do with your Q-tip stick figure man that they don't care about? That here's the difference. My kids don't care about their crafts and they know they're bad. So, but I don't like put it right in the trash. I sneak around and I put it in the outside trash bin so they don't see that it's in the trash.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I have a huge box under my bed. It's like one of those boxes for gift wrap, long rolls, and it's full of my kids' crafts. And I know I'll get rid of a lot of it, but I don't know at the moment. And I only have one kid. I knew I was going to have one, and I don't know. I've held on to way too much. I guess I just thought it was so interesting that your mother kept it. That was interesting.
That was the shock. Like all she did was make fun of it. So when she died, and she died 4 months to the day after my brother, and she hadn't even been sick. I think she just kind of had a broken heart. So I had to go to Vegas and clean out her apartment. And she collected a lot of like mid-century modern vases and pitchers. And every surface was covered with tchotchkes and knickknacks. And all of that had to go to the dumpster, really, because if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have done that. But at the time, I was so griefed out. I needed to sell her condo, and it was.
And be in control. You needed to have some fucking control. You needed to purge her out and you show, I'm in control now and I know how to deal with this. The past is the past. I got to take over.
I did feel guilty though. I did feel guilty, if I'm being honest, because I didn't have time and my kids were young and we didn't live there. And so we had to get home and I had work. So the realtor who was helping sell that condo, I said, I just need all this stuff out. He's like, my cousin can bring his truck and just take all the stuff and just donate it. But I'm pretty sure it ended up at the Clark County dump.
And that's okay. That's all right. That's all right.
I actually wrote just about that in a newspaper piece that was called, the headline was, "Can you rest in peace while your stuff rests in a dumpster?" And it was just like grappling with that. I had thrown out all my mom's shit and she loved that crap. I mean, she collected it and she loved it. She had a schnauzer and she had like so many schnauzer salt and pepper shakers and crap.
Yeah.
And it was like, but that stuff is just stuff of this earthly plane. It doesn't matter.
You better believe it. Did you take a picture of the little craft you made by chance?
No, I just want to get the fuck out of there and go home.
I get it. I get it. Listen, you had a tumultuous relationship with your mother and your father when you were little because they did some horrible things. And you touched on it in Exploding My Baby, but now you go into it in a much fuller way. And it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And in this paragraph, you even say it's unbelievable. You say to your mom, how could you put me on a Greyhound bus to see dad or any grandparents when I was so little, Mom? This isn't even legal now. When I tell people, they don't believe me. I could have been groped on some bus or left behind at a depot in San Luis Obispo or stolen by some sex traffickers. I could have been kidnapped and stabbed, Mom, and nobody would have ever known. I could have been stabbed alone in a bus station restroom. I could have been chopped up into little pieces and buried in a tarp near the slaughterhouse off the I-5 in Coalinga. Because I was a child. I was a child, Mom. And she says, what was I supposed to do? Take you there myself? Jesus, Mom, yes, you were my mother. Who else would take me? I mean, so this is the madness you're dealing with. You're dealing with somebody who honestly thinks that was the only choice they had.
I remember that conversation because it was when I lived in Koreatown, 503 North Commonwealth, big living room. She came to visit, and it was just one of those moments where I decided now is the time to have it out with my mom about my childhood. Because that's all I knew. So it took me a while of understanding that. And actually, I think I must have already had a baby then. And so I must have thought, like, who would put their child on the Greyhound? So I started flying alone at age 3. I don't think that's legal now. Every month.
It's not
and then
legal.
It got too expensive. I aged out of the unaccompanied minor flying program. So they put me on the bus, San Francisco to LA, starting at age 8. It's so funny that San Luis Obispo's come up twice because I did that route so many times from age 8 to probably 11 that I really it would stop. And I knew all the rest stops. And if you didn't get back on the bus in time, you'd be left there. So the driver would see a little kid, me in my pigtails with my Mad magazine and say, hey, I'm leaving here in 40 minutes. And if you're not on this bus, I'm going to leave you here.
And then in the book, you talk about how at one point your mother put you on a plane and sent you to the wrong airport or sent you to Burbank, but your dad thought you were at LAX. So your dad's at LAX and you're a kid. You're a tiny child and you are in Burbank hanging out with the gate agents or the ticket agents because they don't know what to do with you. The flight attendant's off duty. There's this kid and who knows why is there a 5-year-old just hanging out in this airport? Oh, her dad's at LAX. It's just preposterous.
Well, in the time before cell phones, those comedies of error could go on a long time, right? So they kept announcing over the white courtesy telephone, Nelson Strasser, is there a Nelson Strasser here? We have your daughter. But, no one responded. And I remember it this is the movie scene and this is how it was, right? You can see through all the windows, all the airplanes, and it's light. And then you can see it's dusk and then it's dark. I mean, I was there a long time before anyone figured out that my dad had gone to Burbank and I was at LAX.
I mean, this is just a lot of trauma for a kid. We're going to get over to your story here because I know we're going to run out of time and it's going to get too tight. But, I did want to ask you, in this book, there are some long ass sentences and long paragraphs where you are just dumping out this grief and you're kind of having inner monologue and you're trying to figure it out. And I'm just wondering, how do you write that? How long did this take you? Do you say, okay, Daniel, you take care of the kids tonight. You get the kids dinner and I'm going to go in and continue writing about grief. How do you transition between your life and then going into the office or wherever, your bedroom, and then going into your computer and looking at these words and then you make them better?
It was really hard and I'd never want to do it again. It felt like childbirth. When I was done, I thought, I'm glad I did that. That was so hard because I didn't want to write a grief book with a butter knife. If I was going to write a grief book, I was going to sharpen the blade and cut right down to the fucking bone. Otherwise, what was the point? But in doing that, I thought this is when people say like firefighters are running into the building when everyone's running out, writing about grief for me was like that. Like, I think most of us, you start to feel the heavy weight of grief and you start to spiral. It becomes too much. So you do something else and you you do something that's distracting or you take a break. But when you're writing about it, I would just sit here in my office and just like, some there are paragraphs that took me 3 days, and then there's entire chapters that took me 1 day. But I think it's some of the paragraphs that came most easily. Like, I'm not a musical person. I have a tin ear. I'm literally tone deaf. But when I'm writing, not to sound too pretentious, but I think I sometimes like there's something that happens by ear where there's something rhythmic. Like it just like something lands right. And if it doesn't, it sticks in my craw. And sometimes it's just a matter of one word that shouldn't be there. And until it sounds right, I will keep rewriting it and rewriting it.
It's very much like comedy, like every word has weight to it. And your book really shows that you took time, you took care. There's not one misspelled word in the book. I read a lot and I seem to always find at least one or two problems in the book just because I look for it or I see it. Nothing is wrong in this book. And then we're going to start your story 1 second, but I want to read one more paragraph. Grief doesn't go away, but other things come around to dim the glare. Baseball's one of those things because it's an excuse to be together, because it's generational and nostalgic and timeless, and because baseball itself provides guidance for living with grief, because failure is baked into it, and because you can start over, fresh at bat, 3 more chances to hit the ball, game after game, season after season. You just begin again. Wow. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. All right, we're going to get over to your story right now. You guys, Teresa Strasser, you hear her talking. What a talent. What a talent. She is or was the host of The List in Phoenix, Arizona, that has been syndicated, and you've probably seen it wherever you live. And she's also the former co-host to Adam Carolla. You were just back on Adam's show, and I always love hearing you on Adam's show because you are so funny and so, the only thing is when you're on Adam's show, you really have to take that back seat because he's so, because it's his show, and you kind of have to pipe in gingerly. But I wish you could talk more, and you seem to be able to handle Adam very well.
I love Adam, and I'm very comfortable as a second banana. It's actually way more comfortable for me. Like, for example, promoting this book and going on TV shows and podcasts, like I feel like I'm a terrible guest. I'm super boring. I'm clumsy. I'm self-conscious. I second guess myself. Adam never second guesses anything he ever does. He's always got a hot take. I've always got a lukewarm one.
Yeah, but you have more going for you. You're more well-rounded. You're intelligent. You have a sense of empathy. Adam, I'll cut this out if you want, but he's highly autistic.
Oh, no,
clearly.
He would be comfortable with you saying that. As a matter of fact, Dr. Drew and I have had frank conversations where sometimes when I would struggle, he would be like, look, they don't call it Asperger's now, but I will say that working alongside Adam a long time and having like an intimate awareness of his work habits, if he would have to do a live read, let's say it's Purina, you hand him the card and he'd be like, I'd see him look at it and then he'd put it down and he'd improvise. And that's one of the things that makes him so brilliant, because I don't think he's a visual learner the way I am. Like when I see words, I have no trouble reading them out loud. And in fact, I can only learn that way. Whereas he's an audio learner. So if he hears a word, he will never forget it. And his brain is incredible that way. And it was exciting to see like, oh, here's somebody who might not be 100% neurotypical, who's not only found a workaround, but who's found a way to dazzle with his talent because his ear has become so incredible and he is so confident about his own opinions. I don't always agree with a lot of his opinions, but I will never, ever question his ability to synthesize information and formulate a hot take.
Well, you're very generous because all of that is true. But what I'm saying is he's a genius. He's a flipping genius in that realm. But I don't think you would ever want to be that genius, because if you were, you wouldn't have all of the life that you have. I mean, you have compassion and you are able to give to your husband and your family. It's reciprocal. You have memories. You have a social life with friends. You have deep friendships. I don't think Adam has that. I think he stands alone because it's his way or the highway. There's no room for anyone else's opinions in his world.
Well, I'll say two things. One, I am much better and much more comfortable in writing. So I love that you took the time to read parts of my book, because I just feel like whoever I am on the page that is who I am. Because I'm so introverted and self-conscious, when I'm talking, I always think, I wish I could edit what I'm saying in real time. Why did I say that stupid thing? But when I'm writing, I have time to, no one's standing there in front of me.
Right.
I can either let it spill out and it happens quickly, or I can go over and over and over and over until that is exactly what I fucking mean to say. And I just it communicates from a different part of me. And in fact, here's a funny story. Somebody from my agency where my book is represented, Making It Home, Life Lessons from a Season of Little League. Somebody that was in the movie and TV department really loved the book. And before talking to me about potentially going out and trying to sell the rights to it, she called my book agent to make sure that I had written it. Because I think the person who you hear on podcasts or who you see making tacos on television is in a way a very different person from the person that's on the page. I'm just a much better writer than you would think I would be based on how I'm speaking right now.
Okay. However, let me just say this. That all might be true. And I am not comparing and contrasting, but I'm just saying, here's how Adam Carolla writes a book. He's in the car headed to the Grand Prix in Long Beach, and he calls his buddy and tells him a story about when he grew up or his marriage or whatever. And the guy writes it down, and that's the fucking book.
Yeah.
No, that's the book.
A guy does write it down. But look, he does have incredible thoughts off the top of his head. And look, here's another thing about his human connections. And, obviously it's not a private matter. It's out in the public information that he's in the middle of a divorce, etc. However, he's had many long-term relationships. For Dr. Drew and he have been together a very long time, and Jimmy Kimmel and he have had a very long-standing personal and professional relationship. And not a lot of people can say, hey, I've worked. And by the way, I was working with him when, when I was pregnant when I was on that show. So I've had a relationship with Adam for 15 or 16 years.
Right. Right. Now, listen, I love him. I do. And he was one of the reasons why I started Storyworthy, for sure. He and Mark Maron are both huge impetuses for me. However, I guess I'm just saying talent lies in different places. He's talented in a different way, but his talent, his autism or whatever's going on leads him. It seems to be not a rich life for him. It seems like he's in constant turmoil because he has so much to say. He has to get so much out. It just seems like he doesn't seem like a well-rounded person. He seems like there's, one way, and then he's got some other crazy theories going on. And it just, I don't know. I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying your talent is totally different than Adam Carolla's, and it just shines differently. That's all. It shines differently. And you are very good on his show because you do know how to work with him. You're really good with him.
Thank you. I did really love that job, and he was very good to me. He gave me a lot of compliments, and it's funny because the whole Me Too thing was after that. But it really made me think, because he's the man show guy and people would assume that he's a sexist. He called me on my phone. But when we were on winter break, we used to have Danny Bonaducci as a co-host, and he was getting rid of Bonaducci. He didn't care for him. And he called me and said, T, I need you to talk more. You're good at this. You're going to be great at this. I need you to step up and talk more. Now, he's a man asking a female co-host to participate more. And the first year I was there, I was filling in for somebody for 2 days, and I ended up taking over that job. We had a male EP. He was fired. People were always fired over that winter break. It was always like Sunday, Bloody Sunday. But the person who he personally chose to EP that show, Angie Fitzsimmons, female. So he had a female EP when that was not done in radio. He had a female co-host.
Yeah, and I've met Adam. I went to his studio once, and he was on Storyworthy, my 5-year anniversary, which was fabulous. And his story was so funny. I mean, crazy story about building a closet in the wrong house.
I know that story. True story.
I guess what I'm saying is that I've never seen him be at all like a chauvinist. He's never been anything like a chauvinist, never disrespectful to women, nothing like that, nothing like that. But I think it's because it's just about Adam. It's only about Adam. It's never been about anything else. So how could he say anything negative about anybody? Because it's not about them to begin with.
Yeah, well, maybe narcissism saves you from being inappropriate.
Could be. He has beautiful children, and I still listen to his show, and I was thrilled to hear you on it. So there you go.
Thank you. And by the way, shout out to his ex-wife's show called For Crying Out Loud. That's Lynette Carolla and a comedian who I bet you know named Stephanie Wilder Taylor.
Sure.
Those two have a great podcast, For Crying Out Loud, and you should put that in your queue.
Yeah, it's been going a long time. I've listened to a little bit of it, but I honestly didn't know it was still going on because I know Stephanie Wilder Taylor, she, one of her books was like champagne in a sippy cup or something like that.
Chardonnay is not for sippy cups. She's got a new one coming out called Drunkish. She's actually written a bunch of bestsellers. I'm super jealous. I'm like, I mean, I'm trying to do everything I can for making it home. But it's hard. It's hard to sell books if you can't get on the Today Show or Good Morning America.
I understand, but this book, Making It Home, first of all, also, it was published by Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
New York Berkeley, it's called?
Yeah, and I did get a starred review from Publishers Weekly, which was a dream come true.
Yeah, it's huge. And also the Amazon reviews are all very good. And I put mine in there.
Thank you.
And I guess I don't want you. I wish you didn't think that way because this book is so valuable to so many people, and it's gonna help people big time. It's gonna help people, and it's very entertaining from the first page to the last page. I read it in like 4 days. I didn't want to put it down, and then I even, like I said, I went back and read stuff over again because it's just written that well. It really is. Everybody needs to go out and get Making It Home by Teresa Strasser. All right, you guys, wherever you are, put your hands together for the very talented Teresa Strasser. Yay.
Thank you. All right. Well, you will have heard some of this because these are a few stories that comprise the book. And as I mentioned earlier, it is just about one single season of minor league baseball, little league, minor league baseball. That's 9 and 10-year-olds. And this is the 16 games that I spent with my dad across that season. When my brother died, it was 3 years before this season. A lot of people have asked, well, then why not write about the season that happened just after your brother died? Well, here's the thing about Little League. And if you ever played or your kids play, you'll know this. There's one season when shit gets real. And that is when the kids start pitching for the entire game. First, there's T-ball. Kids hit off a tee. Then there's machine pitch. A machine pitches to the kids. Then there's coach pitch. The coach pitches. And then some people will have a hybrid where kids pitch for the first 2 innings and then you wheel out the machine. But in the season of 2019, when my son Nate was on the Purple Pinstripes, coached by my husband Daniel, that was
By the way, hold on. We got to back up 1 second. Why? I cannot believe where you live in Phoenix that every team are the Camelbacks.
Diamondbacks.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks. Every team is a Diamondback. So they have to discern between teams by the uniform color.
Okay.
And
yes.
Daniel's team is the Purple Pinstripes because that's the uniform.
Here's the thing. So the Diamondbacks sponsor the team. You remember in Bad News Bears, and I think their jersey had like the bail bondsman, like whoever sponsors the team. So the Diamondbacks pay for all the jerseys. Thus, every team is the motherfucking Diamondbacks. And you have to differentiate them. So in the whole book, it's like we're playing team camo. Oh, wait, it's team red versus team blue pinstripes. It's team gray versus team black and red. So every team is just, and by the way, there's a draft. Okay. It's minor league is the first time there's a draft. And that's where my husband's skills really shined because he made like the most detailed spreadsheet. He had algorithms. He watched every second of the tryouts. He knew like who was a step faster than who. And again, we're talking about 9 and 10-year-olds.
But he comes home after the draft and he says to you, oh my God, T, like nobody else there even had a laptop.
Shocked. He was shocked. Because when there's a draft, a lot of things can happen, right? It's like a flow chart. What if that person in front of you takes the kid that you were going to take? Who's next? Like you have to have eventualities. And my husband does not leave things to chance. So he was stunned to find out that nobody else had brought their laptop to the Little League draft, stunned and horrified. And he called me and said, I think I just won this draft. Now, this is all in the book, but there's a kid, and I had to change everyone's names because some kids aren't good at baseball, and I don't want to use their real names. And I changed them up a little bit, but my husband kept notes. So every game is exactly play by play, pitch by pitch, what happened, if you can believe it. Because he remembers all of that, and he has notes because he was tracking, what kids were doing. What if he needed to change the lineup or, move the shortstop to second base, who's making errors, who's making plays and all that. But yeah, you might have this where you live, but we have what's called a parking lot tryout. So if you missed the 2 official tryouts for the Little League, you show up an hour before the draft at the Camelback Christian Church, and you do a stupid little tryout in the parking lot. Well, a kid at that tryout named Patrick, that's his real name. I forget his fake name in the book, but that kid had kind of recently moved to the area. So he wasn't really on people's radars, but we knew him from basketball, and we knew he was a great athlete, and his mom had been a world-class tennis player. And kid, Patrick, in the first tryout, he went to catch a very high pop-up in center field, and it hit him on the head. He had to be rushed to urgent care, and he didn't finish his tryout. Well, Patrick shows up at the parking lot trial, but all the dads are kibitzing and they're schmoozing and they aren't paying attention. And my husband's shocked. He's like, why aren't you watching? And he's like, oh my God, that's Patrick. He's a great athlete. I know him. I know him from basketball. And you could just tell from how he fielded, 2 ground balls and the few swings he took that he was incredible, but nobody paid attention. So Daniel was able to get him in a low round because nobody was drafting him. And that is, in fact, one of his great strengths as a purple pinstripe coach. So the reason this season was so intense for my dad and I, and why we bonded over this season, and how this season really was our grief group and helped repair what had been a very fractured relationship, is the tension involved when kids are pitching. And my son, Nate, was a pitcher, and it was so I call it PMS, pitcher's mom syndrome, because the fear and the nerves that come over you. And I know it sounds stupid if you've never been a Little League parent, but in a way, it's a reflection on a lot of things that are hard about parenting, because your kid's out there under the spotlight on the mound. They say it's a team sport, but when your kid's pitching, never is anyone more all alone in a field of play. And everybody's watching. In Arcadia Little League, where I live, in the book, 2 of the coaches played professional baseball. They're real. One of them's Andre Ethier. I don't use his real name in the book, but he was a Dodger. And the other one's Jeff Jenkins. He's got a World Series ring. They were both coaching against my husband.
God. Oh my
It's a
gosh,
baseball town.
Interesting.
Yeah, because spring training is here. So a lot of ball players retire here.
Interesting.
So baseball is a big deal. So there can be hundreds of people watching your kid pitch. And if your kid can't throw strikes and can't get it together, there is not a thing you can do for your child. You can't walk out on the mound. There's nothing you can yell or say. You're going to yell and say things because you feel desperate and you want to help. And you just think to yourself, I don't want to have a growth or learning experience for my child. I just want my child to throw strikes. I just want everything to be easy and good with all of these people watching. And my kid was so competitive and so obsessed. And I just wanted for him. I wanted so hard. And I would try and I had Lucky Charms and superstitions and prayers and all of these things I didn't even believe in. But when my son was on the mound, I was 100% that bitch. I was like angels, fairies, dust, superstitions, throwing salt over my shoulder, turning around 3 times, taking a lucky route, listening to a lucky song, wearing my lucky flip-flops so I could control the universe for my baby. And my dad was an expert on this. Because even though we were just talking about baseball, I remember him sitting next to me in our Costco beach chairs behind the first base line where we watched every game and every practice, by the way, because we were the weirdos that watched practice. And I remember him saying, you can't protect your kid from life. You can't protect your kids from life. And I knew that he was talking about cancer and that what I was experiencing, he wasn't downplaying it. He was understanding it and getting it and relating. That you're on the sidelines sometimes and there isn't a goddamn thing you can do. And that is something that you have to accept. You have to accept it. And that also, when we were on the sidelines, So my book is subtitled Life Lessons from a Season of Little League, which I fought and I hated, and my publisher made me call it that, but I've sort of come to like it. The subtitle that I wrote was A Season of Little League and Big Grief. And my publisher was like, no, big grief isn't a thing. You can't call it that. We don't want to put grief on the top. Anyway, Life Lessons from a Season of Little League, I've come to like because or at least I've come to tolerate. But you hear a lot of coaching and things yelled out on the sidelines of a Little League game. And one of the main things young batters do wrong is they do something called stepping in the bucket, which means a ball is coming at you. This is a very natural thing. You want to step away from the ball because a kid pitcher is probably wild. And some of them are throwing like my kid, throwing pretty hard. He didn't have command yet. So if you're a batter and you're in, third or fourth grade and a hard object is coming at you rapidly and wildly, you might you're going to step in the bucket, which is let's see, it depends. If you're a righty, I think that means you're stepping out towards third. Anyway, you're stepping away from the ball because you're scared of it. You're flinching, right?
Sure.
So a lot of coaching at that level is getting kids to what's called stay inside, hang in against a pitch. And there was one kid on our team, the purple pinstripe season I write about him making it home. That kid stepped in the bucket every single time. He drove my husband crazy. This kid would not, and he was a great fielder and a great athlete, but for whatever reason, it was like in his body to flinch and he couldn't break the habit. It was just like he had the yips or something. He just couldn't hang in there. And I think part of it was it's easier to walk than to strike out because when you swing and miss, it's very embarrassing. If you walk, you still get to run the bases. You still get to have your pants dirty. You still get to participate in the game of baseball, but without ever letting it hurt you. You never have to swing and miss, right? So getting that kid to stay inside was like my husband's goal. And toward the end, he finally just said, he walked up to him during the at-bat and he grabbed him by the shoulders and he said, I just want you. Swing and miss. I just want you to swing and miss. Just swing and miss. If you don't swing at that ball, just swing your bat. And the ball came. He doesn't swing. And my husband's and my husband's you know him. He's a very mild mannered person, even though he's from Philly. And he's like, swing. I mean, he just couldn't. And then on the third swing, he finally...
Wait, what was he screaming? Stay?
Well, he wanted him to swing because he had been stepping into the bucket. So I think he was just swinging so he was screaming, swing your bat, swing your bat.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you step out and swing your bat, which on the third swing, the kid finally moved his bat, but that was enough for my husband. He was thrilled with that. Like, okay, you stepped out. So the problem is if you step out even a little, you're not going to barrel it up. You won't hit it square. You can't hit it hard. To hit a baseball hard, you have to risk it hurting you, bruising you, hitting you. And that, to me, was one of the life lessons that reflected how I felt about grief. Like, there's no way out of this other than through this. And so I'm going to have to stand here. And sometimes it's going to really hurt. And sometimes that ball's going to hit me on the rib. And you're going to see, like, the stitches of the ball in my skin. And it's going to leave a mark, and then it's going to be okay because there's no way out of this unless I stay here and feel all these things and feel them with my dad. And I think that's why baseball was a grief group, because we could have all these big feelings together about baseball, but it was really about everything. We could hate losing, but it was just about baseball, but it was really about everything. And we didn't have to like losing because we hated it and it always sucked and we never liked it and we never, ever accepted it. Except for as much as there was always going to be another game, another inning, another at bat, like the passage you wrote. And, we could survive it. We learned we could tolerate it. And all of the stress of watching Nate pitch, there was one inning where he was pitching, and I've never seen this happen before or since, but there's a rule in Little League where if a pitcher hits 3 batters in one inning, they have to get pulled because the Little League of America has determined that you are actually a danger to others. So, he had some great outings and he had some bad outings, but this one, he hit 3 batters. And then I remember the ump saying something to my husband and my husband walking to the mound, and I can still see it as if in slow motion. And he told Nate, like, you can't pitch anymore. And I saw the look on Nate's face, and he's like, pulls down his cap and he has the ball in his hand. And in slow motion, I see him dropping the ball into his dad's hand. And then, he goes over to first base. And the first baseman, they trade places. And the first baseman takes the ball and pitches. But on the way back to the dugout after that inning was over, mercifully, my husband walked over to say something to Nate, like, now is a time for parenting. You're going to have to dad up here and say that perfect thing. And he went to lean over to tell Nate, whatever thing he was going to say. And Nate just looked up at him and said, Dad, I don't ever want to talk about this again. And the postscript to that is,
wow,
Nate's now playing 14U. He's 13. He's just under 6 feet. And his command is one of the best I've seen in his age group. Like, he is, mom brag, but he is considered an elite pitcher. His command is so good. And it makes you wonder, like, if he hadn't had that experience, he had to fail so unbelievably that, like, he was determined, like, I'm never, ever, ever going to be in that position again. I never want someone to have to take me off the mound. I want to keep pitching and pitching and pitching. And I do love that about him. And look, that's another big thing about parenting. Like, I didn't want him to fail. I didn't want him to get pulled. That was a terrible night. The ride home was terrible. I could just see him fighting back tears. And I just wanted so much for my baby to succeed. And I guess you could have told me then, this is succeeding. You just can't see it now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. After every game, you describe walking back to the car, and there's a red wagon that you put all the equipment in, and you and your dad and Daniel and the boys, everybody's walking back to the car. You can really picture it. The boys might be sharing candy, the little one, Andrew, might jump in the wagon, and you're all heading back to the car. And now you're going to go back, to your house, and maybe your dad's coming over for a minute to have a little bit of tequila or whatever he's doing. He rides his bike. It's very beautiful. It's a lovely family, and it's everything that you didn't have growing up, it seems, Teresa.
Well, thank you. And that was definitely my dream. I think that's another way that baseball was a grief group for us. And whatever that is for you or anybody, it's going to be different. But there was a routine, right? There was normalcy. 2 times a week for Nate's games, and 2 times a week for Andrew, who was probably playing coach pitch then. Like, we had an appointment and a place to be. And, you had to get dressed and leave your house. You had to go there, and you had to focus on something outside of yourself, something that was happening out on the diamond. You had to focus on a bunch of children who were very much alive and in the moment.
Now, when you were out there in the field and you were watching with your dad, you were writing the book at the same time?
Oh, no. I don't think I ever could have done that. I needed like a couple of years, but I had a file on my computer called Little League Grief Group, and I would just add notes to that. And that became the book proposal, and that became the book. I think for me, when I was in the acute phase of grief after my mom and brother died, which lasted what I thought was a lot longer than what I wanted it to, or expected it to, or it should have, making air quotes around should. But I think when I was in that space, I couldn't effectively write about it. I had to be at least a little bit on the other side of it, because it was too emotionally intense for me to have the remove to write.
But you did write down certain passages because it really sounds fresh. I mean, you must have written down, because it's so specific. You've got really great detail.
I'm so glad you said that, because I found a cheat when I was writing. And that cheat was borrowed from my years as a journalist, right? Like, I had trouble with a couple sections. For example, there's my favorite chapter, which is my dad riding his bike. My dad only rides a bike. He's an environmentalist. He doesn't own a car. And he would ride his bike home. And at one game, he said to me, sometimes when I'm riding home, I just scream. I just scream out. No one can hear me, and I'm not bothering anybody. And I just scream and cry. And I was just frozen because my dad didn't usually share that kind of stuff. And I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know every single fucking thing about that bike ride. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, like, well, what do you scream? Do you scream my dead brother's name, or do you like have a monologue, or do you like what is this like? And I was writing that scene and I was having trouble writing it from his perspective. So I actually borrowed his bike and I rode his route.
Oh,
So
that's so sweet.
through Scottsdale to his trailer park. And it then became the easiest thing I'd ever written. I spent like 3 hours. I would stop and pull over and take a note on my phone. Stop and pull over and take a note on my phone. This is how my shoulders feel when I'm gripping the handlebars. This is how the air smells when I'm driving by this pond. This is the sign in front of the Mexican food restaurant where the O is wearing a sombrero. Like all of those things.
I love it. Yeah.
Were cheats. And I did that. So
that's not a cheat. That's not a cheat. That's research.
It's research, right? So a thing that really helped writing the baseball scenes was that my younger one was playing in the minors at the time when I was writing. So I was at the ballpark almost every night. So I could tell you what a glove smells like when it's mixed with sunscreen and the snack bar smell and sunflower seeds, and what little girl's doing a cartwheel behind right field, and who's collecting the foul balls when they're not hitting Christine's house. And, so that was helpful. I think a way to end this story is that, on the sidelines. So my dad mentioned my brother that one day, and another time was when, so my brother and Nate, both lefties. So lefties can't play that many positions in the infield, but you like a lefty on first base. So my brother had been a first baseman, and so was my son. And my dad said, my son's glove wasn't quite as good as my brother's. Sometimes he would boot a ball. And I remember once, the ball kind of took a bad hop and Nate didn't get it. And my dad just nodded his head. And he said, Muggsy, we used to call my brother Muggsy, even though his name Morgan. He'd say, Muggsy would have gotten that one. And then he took a beat and he said, you got to play the bounce. You can't let the bounce play you.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's a good one. That's a good one. And the reason why they say that you got to play the bounce is because it's the same in tennis. When a ball comes across the net, depending on how it bounces, you play that. You don't play what the guy hit. You play the way that ball is bouncing at that time. Yeah, for sure. It's very different.
And that was really a comment on grief. Wow. Because we had to play the bounce. And the way he said it, I knew he was telling it to himself and telling it to me. And that we were both playing the bounce the best we could.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's an enriching book. Like you read the book and I feel filled up. When I read this book, and like I said, I read it very carefully, I felt filled up. Like it gave me every perspective. And, I don't want to talk about your dad's wife, Carol, because she's a despicable person. But you go into her in talking in this book about her, and it kind of culminates in that she threw a lamp at your head. You were a child, this crazy lady. And then that's all interesting as well, because your dad has to deal with that grief, that he put you through that. He put your brother through that. Like your dad made these horrible choices because he's busy being the mechanic that everybody loves. Oh, everybody loves Nelson. Fix this. But he couldn't fix his family life.
That is a very good summary. I did my first book group. Was that last night or the night before last at our local independent bookstore called Changing Hands. It's a great bookstore. They hosted a book group of, like 15 or 20 people who had chosen my book for their book group. And so many people were asking about Carol. It was,
well, because she's the juicy part. She's a juicy part of, because she's a complete demon. And so she's like the protagonist in a way. Is that right? Does that sound right?
Yeah. Or the antagonist.
The antagonist.
As I think I describe her as like the great Santini in Blue Espadrilles. She was so evil. When Pat Conroy, who's one of my very favorites, and my favorite book of his, My Losing Season, also takes place over one season, but it's of basketball. But he said that when he wrote The Great Santini about his dad, that he had to make the character of the Great Santini a lot nicer than his real dad, because no one would have believed that his dad was that cruel and awful. And that was like with Carol. I'm like, people aren't going to believe some of this because she was really a fairy tale evil person. And by the way, they met at a cult called Synanon, which was like in Santa Monica or Venice at the time. And, they didn't live at the cult, but they would have like meetings a couple times a week that people went to learn. I think Synanon's thing then was called assault therapy. So a bunch of people would just tell you everything bad about yourself. And then, you would allegedly become a better person. But I don't think it worked.
Oh, God. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. I'm trying to look. There were so many more words. I meant to write them down, but I highlighted them instead. Some of your vocabulary. You have an excellent vocabulary. Are you always learning new words? Do you actually research words, or do you listen and somebody tells you a word, then you start using it?
Sometimes when I'm reading, I come across a word and I just think I'm in love with that word. Why haven't I used that in anything? I think in this one, there were some religious terms, because when I stumbled across because this was our grief group, and grief groups are often in synagogues or temples or any kind of religious word. So I did end up using some religious language, and it's not a fancy word, but exalted is a great verb. Elegiac.
Exalted means rise above.
Exalted. It's like, God, I almost need to look up the definition. Elegiac is like something from an elegy, like what's said after someone dies. Again, back to writing obituaries. I think I use the phrase.
That's a good word.
Elegiac. Yeah.
Wow.
I use the phrase cathedral of chalk lines, which isn't fancy, but it has like a nice rhythm to it. There were a lot of religious.
What's the Talmud? Talmud, you say?
The Talmud is like the Jewish Bible. We have the Old Testament, but the Talmud is like a bunch of religious teachings that are very ancient.
Not the
we
Torah.
have the Torah and the Talmud. And if I
are
was
they
a
two
better
different
Jew,
books? Are they two books?
Yeah, Jews are right now are going to be like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. No wonder she's named Teresa. But the Torah and the Talmud, so the Talmud is that people. It's like a bunch of rabbis and thinkers dissecting religious laws and stories from the Bible. And I think the Torah is just the Old Testament itself, but I might have those wrong.
My boyfriend is Jewish, by the way, and we've been seeing each other almost 5 years, and I've learned a lot. And
it's a mitzvah, mazel.
It's a wonderful religion, actually. I think it's very interesting. His mother has talked a lot, and when somebody talks about her grandparents and the whole family was wiped out, in Poland, like how do you not give that reverence? I mean, it's just, it's just unbelievable.
Well, I write about this some in the book, but my mom was first generation. Like her parents were, escaping Europe, and they were pretty traumatized when they got here.
I bet. Yeah. Okay. So the boys are still playing baseball. Nelson is still in Phoenix.
Yep.
Daniel is a hero.
He just finished coaching the Arcadia Little League 10U All-Stars all the way to runner-up in the state of Arizona. We lost in the ship, but we made it all the way there, runner-up.
How exciting. Did Daniel ever see himself as a coach like this? And did he play baseball?
He played baseball, and it's funny. He's in all his glory. I remember when I started dating him, I was on the Adam Carolla show, and at our wedding reception, Adam made a speech, and it was kind of funny, but also like I think he was serious, and he goes, and to Daniel, he's a solid 6. And I think like what he meant was like, this guy's not famous. We're living in Hollywood, and like you've married like a civilian, like you've married a regular guy
with health insurance,
with dental insurance and health insurance, and like nobody knows what he does for a living, and I don't think I still do. But like I remember at the time, my therapist off the 101. Here's the thing I love about LA. I had therapists off almost every exit of the 101 North, like all up and down. Sharon, I think that was off the Havenhurst exit.
Sure.
She was God, she was a great therapist. She was so good. She told me, Yeah, you know what? He's a 6 now to people, but when you get married and have kids, he's going to be a 10.
Oh,
And like,
that's so
because he's like, he makes lunches, he organizes carpools, and he's the coach that has the laptop.
he loves you. He loves you. He loves being a family man. And it's just, he is like he's the dark horse in this story. He's the hero.
Well, thanks. He's a 10 to me because I think when
Aw.
you grow up in a chaotic environment, there's something like there's nothing sexier than somebody who's stable.
Yeah, I
You know what I
agree.
mean? Like when I walk into a room full of people, my eye still goes to him. Like he's a
Aw.
10 out of 10 for me.
Did you guys get a piano? Do you have a piano at your
Yeah.
house? Because I know he used to play piano, and you always said, like, I think I'm the reason why he doesn't play piano. And I'm like, he can play piano if he wants.
I killed all his hopes and dreams. He plays
You
all the
did
instruments.
not. You
He can
gave him.
play. He was in a dad band briefly, but I made him quit because I kill all his hopes and dreams. But no, he can play guitar, bass, piano. He actually does have perfect pitch. He's like,
Wow.
he's he's an underachieving person because he's not driven by, I think, some of the cultural things that drive me, like just talking about the book. And every morning I have a stomach ache because I'm not a bestseller. It's a good book. And like you said, the reviews are good and the Amazon reviews are good. But I think it's just a cultural thing. Like if you don't win, you might die. You won't be relevant to your culture, to your community. You have to be the best to survive. And my husband doesn't have that. It's okay enough for him
He's
to be good at
healthy.
things. Yeah. It's okay enough for him to be good at something, playing in a dad band or like tooling around on the piano in his office.
Okay, but wait a minute. You don't really get to stomachache in the morning, do
I
you?
do. I'm so, yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can't. I'm
okay.
I really am like, but my last book was a bestseller for 1 week, LA Times bestseller. But this book hasn't gotten there yet. And every day I have to talk myself off a ledge of like, it's not good enough. Yeah.
No. Okay.
I'm just keeping it real with you. It's probably not the kind of thing I should
No,
confess,
it's okay.
but
It's
true.
okay. But I just want you to, I'm trying to convey to you like how important whoever does read this book, it's important to them. They are loving it. They feel it. Like every inning, you feel it. The chapters are almost like innings. Like it's a deeply moving book. Just worry about that. Be grateful for what you have. You've got people who love this book. You did this, like even for me. Like, please, Teresa, you have to think about that. You don't think about what you don't have. You think about what you have. You have that beautiful
you.
family.
Thank you. Thank you. I do try and reframe it because when I was writing, I had an index card and I taped it up behind my desk with one of these stupid mission statements, but it said, to use my authentic voice to connect with humor and heart. So
And that's what you did.
It didn't say, but I also really wanted my book to be for sale in airports. So
No,
that was.
I hear you. I hear you. And why isn't Storyworthy on NPR on the weekends? Instead, they have that annoying lady. She's always eating and she's cooking. It's like she's doing a cooking show and nobody's
I hate that
listening
lady.
because it's horrible.
Horrible.
So how could Storyworthy not be on Saturday afternoons? Anything is more entertaining than listening to that lady eat and cook.
Agreed.
But it's not. I mean, I'm just saying, like, as well as I do, unfortunately, talent doesn't shake out that way. It's not like the best songs are on the radio. You know that.
No, you're right. But, we've talked a lot about the chaotic childhood. And here's a little story that tells you all you need to know about me. So I think I must have been 8 or 9, and San Francisco was having a citywide poetry competition. And all I wanted and still do was to like win stuff because my mom responded to that. She was busy. She was tuned out. She wasn't interested in being a parent. She had lost custody of us and my dad gave me back. So she never even had legal custody. But when I wrote something good, that made my mom light up and she was just tickled and she would read it and reread it. And me winning a contest was like, that got her attention. That made my mom happy. And I just wanted to make my mom happy. She was always struggling. She was always depressed. Anyway, so I entered this poetry competition. I went back and forth like, which poem do I enter? And I couldn't choose one. So I entered two, and I used a fake name. So I entered one as Teresa Strasser and another with a fake name. And then they announced it at Stern Grove, which is this huge outdoor place where like my mom would drag me to see Pete Seeger, and like all the hippies would take their kids. And there was like, thousands of people there. And they announced the first place winner. And by the way, these poems were fucking terrible. Let me just tell you that. Okay. They were fucking I can't do justice to the horrendousness of these 8-year-old poems. Are probably always awful, but these were both awful. I really think there just wasn't a lot of competition. So they announced the first place winner, and it's me. So I go up on the stage.
Wait, is it you, Teresa Strasser, or is it you, the other person?
It's me, Teresa Strasser. So I go up on the stage. There's thousands of people there. It's busy. It's crowded. It's a huge stage. I go up there. Yay! I got a prize, which was like a big hardcover book. I don't remember anything else about it. And then they announced the second place winner, and obviously, of course, that's also me.
Oh my God.
But I can't accept the award because I have, a scandal. Like I've committed a fraud, and I can't cop to this fraud, but I really wanted to be like, say, that's me too. Give me my prize. But yeah, to this day, the San Francisco citywide poetry contest second place winner has never claimed his or her prize.
Oh my gosh. Did you tell your mom that was you as well?
Yeah. She was just thrilled that I had won.
Okay. But also, I know it's terribly complicated and almost impossible to reframe a situation, but you may find some solace in that your mother did introduce you to a lot of art. She took you to places like my mother didn't have that wherewithal. My mother, was a homemaker in Pittsburgh. She would not have even known how to go to a concert, let alone who Pete Seeger was. I mean, your mother did introduce you to a lot of culture and art. So that was a good thing. That was a good thing. Your dad,
excellent. Everyone's favorite mechanic. Trustworthy. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's favorite mechanic. So it's better than coming from, my dad wasn't in jail.
True.
Your dad wasn't in jail.
So I know
he wasn't a drug dealer.
In some ways that I was self-conscious about that when I was writing, but I think this is the story I have to tell. I can tell you exactly what it was like. And it wasn't like Glass Castle where the lady's writing about her mom was homeless, or educated. But this was the story I had to tell. And it was a simple story about that one season and how family relationships can be redeemed. I hope that's what people take from it, because to your point, thank you. I've gotten a lot of messages, direct messages, comments, reviews, and a lot of people say, well, I had a difficult relationship or have with my mom or dad. And I think here's a roadmap of what it can look like when you've said the unsayable to somebody, as I said to my dad when I was mad at him when my brother was dying, and he said the unsayable to me. And yet, he's my best friend. And a week ago, we drove back from Tucson. My husband was driving with the kids. That's where the state all-star tournament was. And I was driving just with my dad. And I remember when we got in the car thinking, oh, I'm so happy that it's just me and my dad in the car. And we just talked the whole time.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm glad Nelson's around.
I'm glad I got to have the experience of knowing that you can have such a deep, dark break. You can a relationship can fracture and tear and rip, and there can be so much scar tissue. But if you can, hang in against the pitch, not step in the bucket, and be like, wow. I have a lot of feelings sometimes when you say certain things. I'm triggered. I'm mad. I remember how much I hated my stepmonster and you didn't defend me. I have these feelings when you chew loud. I have feelings when you do a lot of shit, but I also love you. And I would rather you be in my life and practice tolerating frustrating moments, because it's worth it to have a car ride like I did and just think there's almost nobody I'd rather talk to on this earth than my dad. I love my dad. He's my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. We got to wrap this up. But listen, I don't know how to. Okay. Okay, so like Robin Williams had in his kitchen a sign that said, "Don't think about what you want, think about what you have." And that could be a bad example because then, he killed himself. But I have that. I wrote that and I put it on my refrigerator. Don't think about what you want, think about what you have. Because I still do coin laundry. You see, I don't want that. I don't have whatever. I'm just saying, like, we have to go back to that we're healthy. Your kids are healthy. Your dad is there. Daniel is like everything. You are so rich. You are so rich in life. You have a lot, Teresa. You do. And I understand that want, but the people that do know you, all those fans of the list in Phoenix and your friends here in LA, like, we value you. So we don't want to hear you say that you don't feel good enough. It's okay that you say that, but we want you to know that, wait a minute, what about how much I value you? Doesn't that mean anything? And then you say, yeah, it does. You know what? That I do have that. I have, it's not what I want necessarily, but I do have a lot of people who this book is very important to, and like my sister's husband died and I'm going to have her buy this book. I'm not passing it on. Everybody should own the book. And then you can even go through it again if you need to. I highlight and I dog ear all my books. And then I can go back and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Oh, that's right. That meant something to me. And so people can do this with your book. It's almost like a workbook in a way of grief. And you just put your words are very, very thought out. You could tell you spent time on this book. It's not written fast. And you didn't just narrate it to somebody on the phone and they wrote it down. I mean, you have put a lot of energy and your soul is in this book. And I just think it's beautiful.
Thank you so much. I am going to remember that I do need a sign. And I know I did write this book for my people, and my people are the grievers, and all of us will be grieving something.
That's right. That's right. It's a beautiful book. You even talk about the grief groups that you went to, that Daniel helped you find a good one, and, about the other people and what they lost. And, some people are grieving about losing a ring a couple of years ago. And you're like, I win because my mother and my brother passed away. You know what I mean? So there's some levity to the book as well. There really is.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Because my very good friend, Ben Mankiewicz, who you may know from Turner Classic
yeah, of course.
Movies, he's actually like a brother, and he's in a scene in the book because I was working at TMZ the day my brother had this 17-hour surgery, and Ben was there, and we just have the kind of relationship where literally the day we met, within an hour, we told each other how much we were making at that job, and I think within a half a day, it was like we had known each other forever. But he's always telling me, your book's not griefy. Like, people think it's really serious. It's funny. You got to tell people that it's funny.
No, it's super funny. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of levity in it. And again, just the way you put the words together, the sentences are very nice. You've got great sentences.
I'm so proud of this book. I love this book. And I think that's why I'm like,
Yay.
Why isn't it for sale in the airport? But, it could still happen.
No. Well, first of all, I work at a bookstore, and it's a goddamn miracle that even a book gets on the shelf. That's a goddamn miracle. When people come in and they say, my book isn't this and my book isn't that, I'm like, look around. You know how many authors there are? Look how big our store is. Like, just to get on the shelf is a goddamn miracle. So trust me, I understand books and I understand a lot about books. I've been working in this industry for like 15 years. So I get it. I definitely understand, but it's something that you did, and it's an accomplishment.
Well, I guess it'll always be in the Library of Congress, but also, something I do try to focus on, to your point, and then I know we'll wrap it up, but so many miraculous things have happened and around this book, and so many crazy doors have opened. And I try to focus on those instead of the two things or the three things that haven't happened that I wanted. But one of the most incredible was that I thought, who's the number one person that I'd want to have a blurb from on the cover of my book? And I can't.
Oh, yeah.
I came up with that name, and I was like, well, I don't care if you've never seen an inning of baseball. The one name you would know is Cal Ripken Jr.
Cal Ripken Jr. Yes.
I Googled how to reach Cal Ripken Jr. That is how I got that blurb.
Unbelievable. And he wrote a wonderful book.
Yeah, and then he has they pulled that from the front, but he has a longer quote on the back cover.
Yeah, I'm looking at the back cover right now. He has a long quote here. And then you also get quotes from Adam, which is nice, and Stephanie and Dr. Drew. Here's what Cal Ripken says. Baseball has always been a way for people to come together. This is a story about a team that becomes a family and a family that becomes a team. It's a wonderful book that powerfully captures how we work through life's challenges with baseball as a backdrop. I love that. It's true.
Hyperventilating when I got that. I still can't believe it.
So when you wake up in the morning, this is what you need to think about. My God, Cal Ripken, get out of here. Get out of here. Think about that. And you've touched a lot of people. So really, you guys, everybody, head over to teresastrasser.com. You'll see there's a beautiful picture of the book right there at teresastrasser.com, Making It Home. You can buy it now anywhere you buy your books. Try to buy it at your local bookstore if you can, or just tell them that you'd like it. They'll order it for you, no problem. You can, of course, get it on Amazon, but I like to support the local book dealers. You know that. Anyway, this has been wonderful. I so appreciate your time, Teresa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you guys, we got to wrap it up. Again, don't forget to follow Storyworthy over there on social media at Storyworthy. And you can always go to storyworthypodcast.com and join my mailing list. Yay. You'll get a short newsletter every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. And it's nice. We stay connected. Why not? And again, check out teresastrasser.com and get the book, Making It Home. It's a beautiful book, so well written, and also very, very funny. All right, you guys, one more time on behalf of the very talented Teresa Strasser. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you guys, my name is Christine Blackburn saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
Celebrate Thanksgiving with Safeway. This week at Safeway, get whole Signature Farms frozen turkey, 10 to 15.5 pounds for $8 each, or 16.1 to 22 pounds for $10 each. Member price of the minimum $50 purchase. Limit one per household. Plus, packs of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, 7-Up, Dr. Pepper, or AHA Sparkling Water are buy two, get three free. Limit 3 free items. Also this week, get 5-pound bags of Signature Farms russet potatoes for 97 cents each with digital coupon. Limit one. Visit Safeway.com or head in store for more details.